Listen here, buddy. I like open world games. I'm not making this video to shit on them. I just think not every game should be an open world. And in fact, I think very few games that have an open world utilize it well at all. Now, the overuse of open worlds is realistically a broader symptom of the trend chasing that's taken over the video games industry in the past few years, if not past few decades. Ever since Skyrim came out and was the hit video game that it was, it's been one of the few things that executives think sells games, so they keep doing it. And I mean, I get it. They get to claim that their game is like 80 hours long without having to actually design meaningful content, you know? They just copy paste stuff and call it 80 hours of gameplay. But I like meaningful content. Honestly, I'm tired of the overuse of the open world formula. So that's what this video is about. We're going to go over a few examples of bad open worlds and why they're bad, and how being an open world can worsen a game that could have been truly great, even if it doesn't make it a terrible game on its own. It just makes it worse than it could have been. But we're also going to talk about how you properly do an open world, and in what are, in my opinion, the only two justifications to actually make your game an open world. At least the valid justifications, because there's many bullshit justifications you could use. Let's start with a very recent example of a bad and completely pointless open world. Mario Kart World. This open world is genuinely terrible. First off, it feels like it kinda wants to be a collectathon, but there's no way to track the collectibles outside of the question mark thingies, like the pads. Which is like, okay, you don't actually want to be a collectathon at that point because you don't want to be 100%ed, I guess. It's also an open world that's almost entirely devoid of activities to do. There are activities, most of them are shit. The ones that are there, the peach medallions and the question mark pads, are genuinely just find thing, grab it. Some of them are placed in awkward spots that force you to interact with the driving mechanics to get them, but most of them are pretty goddamn boring. And the good activities here are the P-switches, which are, driving challenges realistically, most of them. But there's no system to guide you to them, there's no system to track them, and for all of these systems as well, there's terrible rewards as incentives to interact with this content. The rewards are shitty stickers that you can put on your cart that you won't ever notice, and that's the only reward. There's no full completion reward, nothing. Doing 10 of each unlocks mirror mode. Wow, the mode everyone kinda never plays. It's also just esoteric nonsense to unlock a mode that the game doesn't tell you. Right? That's besides the point, but still. So like, why would I play this open world? I mean, the P-switches are kinda fun. I might spend a little bit here and there playing it, but it's realistically not really worth your time. And this is a game that's overall hurt by the open world structure as well, because it forces the tracks to be interconnected and affects how Grand Prix works, and there's a whole online stuff, which is more Nintendo's fault than the actual design, but there's definitely an argument to be made that the fact that the game is open world makes the tracks a bit worse, because they have to all be grounded within the open world. Now let's go over a few more examples, quickly, of bad open worlds within games that I think are genuinely great. By the way, I do still think Mario Kart World is a great game. The titles I picked for this video are games I think are good, but could be so much better if they weren't open world. That's kind of the theme here. Now I'm gonna go over 3 games. Horizon Zero Dawn, Ghost of Tsushima, and God of War 2018. These 3 are all games I genuinely enjoy quite a bit. But all 3 of these, I would make the argument, would be a lot better if their open world didn't exist, right? If there were more linear games, or if at the very least the open world was kind of decent. These are all open worlds filled with copy-pasted content to fill an empty world. It feels like they built a world first, right? To make a world for the story to exist within, and then they kind of scrambled in a rush before launch to try and fill it with something, anything before launch, and that led to copy-pasted nonsense. God of War's case is the most unique of these three, because the game is linear for the first 10 to 15 hours, and is an incredible time. And, despite its RPG systems that feel really out of place, it's still a really good game in the first half. But halfway through the game, it opens up, and it loses all structure. When God of War hits its open world section, it feels like you're eating ice cream, and you get to the center, and there's just a piece of shit in the middle. But it's not chocolate ice cream, and the guy who made your ice cream didn't wash his hands and accidentally put shit in it and didn't notice it because it was all brown. You're eating vanilla ice cream. Someone purposefully put a piece of shit in the middle of your white ice cream. It was clearly intentional. Someone decided that this should be there. That's what God of War 2018 feels like when it hits the open world section. Because someone decided that should be there, and that would sell more copies, is what truly baffles me. The RPG systems that I complained about a bit earlier really only exist to give you a reason to interact with the shitty copy-pasted content in the open world, right? It's there to give you a reward for doing this stuff by giving you, ooh, shiny number goes up or something, or gear score stuff. You could remove this entire section of the game that's kind of open worldy, that's a very big open section with copy-pasted content, and honestly, I think it would straight up be a better game. If the game could just delete that entire section, and I think most players would have a lot more fun. It's literally just there to pad out game time, and maybe try and market the game as an RPG. That's all it is. Moving on to Horizon Zero Dawn, I would be willing to bet that 99% of players that played this game ignored a massive majority of the content within it. Because realistically, it's more there for ambiance than anything else. It's decor. That's what it is. It's copy-pasted enemy camps and, dinosaurs you can climb up on to maybe fill your map with something or other, and maybe get a little bit of gear or something. It's wasted time, realistically. You do it once or twice, and then you start ignoring all of it, because it's just not worth your time. Some of the side quests in that game are also pretty terrible, but overall, content that isn't open world is fairly solid. I do actually like this game quite a bit. There's just no reason to interact with the open world other than your RPG stats again. Openness is not as big of a detriment to this game as it is in the case of God of War. It's just kind of pointless. It doesn't actively hurt the formula too much though. Ghost of Tsushima's a bit of a weird one. Its main and side quests are actually pretty damn great. Most of it. It's a great time. But the game constantly catches your eye with pointless enemy camps, just copy-pasted nonsense. It's not quite clear what the game wants you to do with it, because it constantly drags your attention to things that aren't fun and drags you away from the fun stuff. If you make an effort to ignore that content, it's actually what I would call a pretty great game. And you could say this about all of these cases. If you ignore the open world stuff, the worst that happens is you're a bit underleveled, whatever, it's probably still fun. But why put something in the game if ignoring it is the most enjoyable way to play the game? It's pointless bloat for marketing, realistically. And I could also make an entire video about the pointless RPGification of games. In AAA action games especially, just over the past decade, I've decided they all need to be RPGs for some reason. That's something I can make an entire video about, but in many cases it feels like a symptom of making a game open world, because you need to justify these copy-pasted enemy camps with a reward of some sort. And RPG stats are the most natural way to do that. Many of these games feel like they might have not even been designed as RPGs in the first place, but they realized, hey, we have all this nonsense content we need to justify somehow. Let's put in stats into the game. Now, obviously I've been kind of shitting on these games because I don't like the shitification of game by game executives chasing trends, but there's a good way to do open world games. There's a reason open world became a trend. It's because some games did it incredibly, and some games still do it well. But to me, if you're going to make your game open world, it's not because you just want to make an open world game because that sells, or because you already have a game you're making and you might as well make it open world. No, to me, you need a valid justification for it. And here are the two primary ones that I think are valid. Now, you could probably come up with more. There's probably other ways to do it, but these are the main two justifications that I think are completely valid, and that if you told me you want to do this with your game, I would tell you, yes, the open world path is an incredibly good one for this game. One is what I would call the emergent gameplay and exploration. These are broadly bullshit marketing terms that companies use to try and market any open world game. But if you actually want to make a ridiculous amount of great, individually unique pieces of content, and you think the best way to present these is by putting them in a massive world that encourages adventure and exploration and the sense of discovery and finding these unique pieces of content, and telling a cohesive and well-paced story is not your focus in this game, then your game should probably be open world. Yes. This is a very specific case though. You don't just want to copy-paste encounters. Your goal is to design unique pieces of content across a massive world, because the discovery of these actually meaningful pieces of content will be very fun if each of those pieces of content is super unique and has actual love put into them. The second valid justification for me is world building, where your goal with the open world is to craft a massive world that feels lived in. And you want to prioritize this over a great and long main story. Your world, its characters, its locations, and everything being realistic and feeling lived in is more important than streamlined gameplay. This is what you're saying if you're using this justification. That can absolutely apply to some games. These are usually games that don't want you to 100% them either. They might have a little bit of copy-pasted stuff, but that's because the experience around the gameplay is some of the most important stuff, in fact more important than the gameplay in many cases in these kinds of games. Your goal in this case is a ton of quests and a ton of quest lines and a ton of content that is technically side content, but that's just as long and just as good as the main story of more linear games. Your goal is to create many different threads that don't necessarily converge together to create a main story. You want the players to come across a variety of interesting stuff that doesn't necessarily have to follow a linear structure. This would be your goal with this justification. Now, these two can be combined sometimes, but most of the time one of them applies more than the other. We're going to go over a few examples of games that fit within this. One, in terms of the emergent gameplay, I would say Elden Ring is the best example of this. Now, yes, there's a few repeat bosses, no game is perfect, but Elden Ring, truly more than any other open world game, has a meaningful piece of content across every corner, despite its massive world. Every time you turn a corner, there's a new dungeon with a completely unique boss, a completely unique layout, a completely unique challenge. This is also something Breath of the Wild goes for, to less success in my opinion, but to many people a lot of success as well. These games don't focus on story. These games focus on adventuring and finding meaningful content across every corner that is just as satisfying as if it was in a linear structure, because the pacing of the game doesn't matter in this case, because these pieces of content are so disconnected from each other. Putting them in a linear structure might actually feel weird. That's why Elden Ring really works as an open world, and might not work if it was more linear, because these pieces of content feel so disconnected from each other that it would feel very weird if they were just right one after the other. In the case of world-building games, the best examples to me are Skyrim and The Witcher 3. These games are renowned for their side quests honestly being better than the main quests in a lot of situations. Especially Skyrim, less so The Witcher 3, but both of these games have side quest lines, and individual locations and characters that you get invested in just as much, if not more so, than you get invested in the main story of these games. That's why they work as open worlds. Because every time you visit a new location, you're interested in meeting its characters, in learning what you can do here, what's going on, the story of this place, the story of the events going on around here, rather than trying to follow the main quest. In fact, I think a large majority of Skyrim players no longer ever do the main quest because they just care a lot more about doing the side content. That's testament to the fact that this formula really did work in Skyrim. That's something that AAA executives that just want to make their random ass game an open world don't seem to understand. Skyrim didn't work just because it's an open world. Skyrim works because the entire game is designed around being completely open world from a world building perspective. Every single element within Skyrim works towards that, rather than just be a game that happens to be set in an open world. One last thing I want to talk about here is that even if one or more of these justifications could apply to a game idea, the open world format is not necessarily the best or only option. The best example of this is the Yakuza games. I wouldn't call these games open world because their world is so tiny, but they're kind of open. But they're so far from the gigantic scale that is the standard for open world games. These are ultra compact games being set in a single neighborhood of a single city for the most part, outside of very specific quests that take you outside of those, and they have a ridiculous amount of side content that's often the star over the main story. For most players, the side content in Yakuza games is the draw, but they don't slap all of it into a pointlessly large world. They understand that they want a focused experience. They want players to actually find their content. They're not scared of you 100%ing the game. They want you to do it. They want you to find every piece of content, because every piece of content was handcrafted to be something truly incredible, which is what you don't get when a AAA executive meddles to have a game that shouldn't be open world become open world. Yakuza games would probably be worse if it took you 3 minutes in between each side quest to just, even if you knew where they were, to traverse the world between each of them. There's no point in just adding space in between them, or empty buildings in between to pad out the game time a little, so you have to actually, traverse a bit more distance to find the next one. Yakuza games understand that their games are best presented when it's compact. You don't need a massive world to have a massive amount of meaningful content, or to make a fleshed out world. It is only one of multiple avenues you can go down to have that effect. Games used to want you to 100% them, but open world games really don't want you to do that a lot of the time, because they understand that the way a bad open world works makes it completely a mind-numbing chore to try and 100% them. That's why a lot of them don't even track how many quests there is in the game or whatever. So you don't know everything that's there, so you don't try and 100% it. Trend-chasing executives are incredibly skilled at shitifying projects that could have become great games. Forcing devs to make an open world in a project that really doesn't need one is only one of the many ways they do that. Pointlessly making a game into a live service is another really popular solution to make a game dogshit by executives. When you fundamentally alter the core idea behind a game, the core systems, by forcing it to match a trend that some executive who's probably never played a game before thinks will make them more money, you end up affecting so many aspects of a game in an irreversible way that can truly make it so far from what its true potential was. Thanks for listening to me yap. Tried to make this one a bit shorter. I know my previous few videos were a bit too long. I'm trying to work on that. Went back to a bit more scripted, because I think those videos are usually better out of me. Anyways, I do not believe in outros. So I think if you want to sub, you can sub. But if you don't want to, you should tell me everything I did wrong and why I should never make another video again. Either way, you should definitely get out of here and do something better with your time than whatever the hell you're doing right now. Get out of here.